If you're thinking of starting couples therapy, then you want to know the three mistakes that can make or break your progress. Most people struggling in a relationship are stuck in a pattern of recycling arguments, repeating occurrences of the silent treatment, and wishing things would get better. The truth is that most people hope that by waiting, their relationship will get better. The problem is that most things don't change until the input changes, meaning we change what we put in and we get something out different. In this episode, I want to dive into what you can do when you want to change patterns. Couples therapy can be a good option, but it doesn't work for everyone. So check out this episode.
Welcome to the Love Conscious Relationship Podcast, where our host gives her expert advice about relationships, communication, connection, and intimacy as she explores ideas about how to share, respect, and validate your partner with one loving experience at a time. Now let's welcome our host, therapist and relationship expert, Jessica Myers-Adams.
Hey there, welcome to the Love Conscious Relationship Podcast. And I want to talk about a few requirements, a few of the things that can work with you or against you if you decide to work on your relationship, especially if you want to go to couples therapy. I'm going to talk about the three biggest mistakes to avoid if you want your relationship to get better. So, last episode, I talked about how do you know if your relationship is too far gone, and how do you know when you want to work on it? So if you're still on the fence and you're not sure if you want to pursue work or even do couples therapy, then you can check out episode 37. If you are thinking you're ready and willing to put the work in, then I want to help you avoid a couple of the pitfalls, because the truth is that in my practice, I see couples who have seen a therapist previously or who have tried to work on things previously and it has failed. And so I want to be able to help you avoid some of those pitfalls. So the first requirement, if you're going to work on your relationship, is that you accept that you don't know what to do and that you need some help. Now, a lot of people might say that they are here or they are, in a session because they don't know what to do. But here's the truth: most couples or most partners go into therapy hoping it will fix their relationship, but they also go there looking to fix the problem. You know what the problem is? Their partner. They know what's wrong. They want to fix their partner. And so, really, what I'm saying here is the first requirement is going to be that you don't actually know what's wrong. Because if you really stop and you get honest in your heart of hearts, you can't say that it is only your partner that is the problem. But when we're in pain, that is what we point to. The partner is the problem. So, couples therapy is not designed to change one's partner. And today, I'm going to break down how you can actually prepare to change and how you could approach couples therapy or that kind of help in a different way. So, the first thing you might be thinking about is, how do you choose the right therapist and what do you need to do to be prepared? And I think before we get to that, I think we need to talk about this mind shift that I just alluded to. Because if you're, showing up with the idea that this therapist is going to perform some magic and fix your partner, well, we know when we stop and think that that is not going to be true. But when we're hurt, we seek comfort, and that's natural. But not all comfort heals us. There's the comfort that soothes you but keeps you stuck. It's kind of like when you call a friend who loves you and cares about you and you say, "This is what my partner did," and they agree with you. They say, "You're right. He's the problem. She's the problem." And it feels good in the moment. It's like pouring honey over a wound. It doesn't change anything. It makes things worse, actually. It reinforces frustration and fuels resentment. It's kind of like throwing gas on a fire and wondering why it doesn't go out. And the unfortunate truth is that friends do that, sometimes therapists do that, especially if you go to an individual therapist and you start to talk about your partner and your partner is not there to defend themselves, right? So we're pouring gas onto a fire and making it worse. There's a different kind of comfort, but it comes after a challenge. This is when you talk to someone who asks you after you've been able to vent a little while. They'll say, I hear you, but let me ask you, what is your role in this? Or how can you respond differently to get a different outcome? And you want to find someone, I usually say an expert, to help you do this. Now, it could be a friend if they have had the same difficulties that you are experiencing and they've gotten past it. It might be a person that you can go to, but we have to reframe. Well, you don't have to do anything. I always say that after I say you have to. It's more effective to find someone who's going to help you to take out the blame and actually give you some power. They'll give you some power back because when you focus on what you can do differently, you gain control over the situation. You're going to stop waiting for your partner to change and you're going to start creating your own movement or shifts that will influence them to respond better. So I think the first thing I wanted to say is if you're even thinking about couples therapy or you're thinking about changing your relationship, then it's this mind shift change that we're going to be looking for our own opportunity to grow. Now, most people that I talk to when I ask if this is something they can buy into, they say yes. But our instinct when we get in pain again is to go back to the finger pointing and to wishing the other person would change. And I am absolutely guilty of this myself. It's there's this choice point, you come to a fork in the road and you're in pain, you're going to take the one that goes downhill. The problem is when you go downhill, there's this big boulder that is going to come after and smash you later. So it's better to take a small, gradual up, um, the route that goes a little bit to the up, the upswing. I don't know how to say that actually. So this is why focusing on yourself in therapy is the most powerful approach. People go to therapy and say, we need to fix our relationship. And they mean, I need to fix my partner to feel better. But you can't control your partner. You can only influence them. And the best way to influence them is to show up differently. So, what I want you to imagine if you're getting prepared to do some changing yourself is to imagine what this process can do for you. And a couple of things that I want you to consider is imagine if it can help you express what you desire in a way that will be more effective. So, what if you actually had a way of speaking that gets through to your partner? Would that be a valuable thing for you to have? Imagine that you're able to stop conversations from turning into fights, that you're the one that's able to discover how to do that. Imagine if you're able to understand what triggers your partner to shut down. And when you're able to do that, you can actually avoid those triggers. And it's like having a combination to a safe that you can open up the safe and actually get them to share with you what they're thinking and feeling. And imagine, lastly, if you could respond to conflict in a way that creates connection instead of distance. What if you knew the formula for this is going south? Let me do this instead to create connection. Would those be of interest to you? Now, I would say if those things appeal to you, then you may be open to the possibility of doing work on yourself rather than waiting for your partner to do all the work. Because when you change the way that you show up, your partner is going to start responding differently. And that's what's really successful about couples therapy, couples coaching, or if you have an effective individual therapist who's not going to be the type that's going to listen and help you slowly. So you want someone who is going to be a decisive leader. And we'll get to that in a little bit when I give you some helpful suggestions. I believe they're helpful to find a good coach or a good leader. So if you're ready to take the first step, and let's say you want to do couples therapy, then how do you get that ball rolling? Because a lot of people think you just go on to Google and you type in marriage therapy in your city and you come up with the first person. And I actually don't recommend that at all. Although if you do type in best couples therapist in my area, I will come up. But I want to give you more suggestions than just doing that. The first things first, though, is does your partner know that you've made this reach out or that you are thinking about it? Have you talked to your partner about doing couples work? Now, I have people who call and they say they haven't talked to their partner, and that's interesting to me. I would coach them on what they can say to their partner. But what if you did talk to your partner? What if they said they didn't want to go? I want to give you a couple of quick thoughts here. Now, I could do a whole longer episode on this topic that would do it better justice, and maybe I'll do that. But the couple of questions, there's two questions that I want you to consider. One is, how did you say it? How did you tell your partner that you want to go to couples therapy or get help? And what is your expectation? So, how did you say it, and what is your expectation when you talk to them? Because they're actually linked hand in hand. It sounds like two different questions, but if you said, we need to go to couples therapy because you need to, if there's some kind of expectation in the request that they're going to change, then that's the first thing to consider. Because if you didn't have that mindset shift that I was discussing earlier, where you're going to focus on yourself, then your partner is very likely to not want to go, to be changed. Who wants to go somewhere where they are going to be the problem? And the second thing is, if you said it in a positive way, like if you were clear about how important it is to you and they said no, were you able to describe what you thought would happen if they don't go? Now, let me give you an example. I have a friend, and I talked about him on a different episode. It's a service provider. I went to um, someone, and I don't want to say what it is because then it would be not anonymous. But I went to this, to this appointment, and the woman was telling me that she told her husband she wanted to go to couples therapy, and he said he wasn't going to go. And she also then told me how bad the relationship was and where she thought it was headed. And I thought to myself, did you tell him that if you don't go to couples therapy, that the relationship might end or that you were leaning out? And I think that's a clear distinction to make. Is it just something that you want to do because you want them to understand that you think things need to get better? Or is it something that you think if you don't do it, that your relationship won't survive? So I think you need to be clear about what will happen if you don't go. And if your partner isn't interested, because sometimes this is the case, then I would say find someone who works with individuals that can help you uncover, what you need to work on. Because I really do think it takes one to tango. I don't think that you need a partner to do this work. Because if you've been listening to me, or if you're new to me, hey, welcome. I think it takes one to tango, and I know that from my own experience that I was able to do a lot of the work and influence my relationship to change. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have a partner who might go with you, then I want to share some important things with you. Those couples that I said that who have seen a therapist in the past and are lucky enough to have a second chance, what they say is they were rehashing fights and they didn't have a plan. And I want to be clear that not all therapy is created equal. And I want to give you the three mistakes that you can avoid. Now, I don't want to bash my colleagues. I'm not trying to do that, but I do want to give you some clear um, suggestions or some things that I have learned in my own experience. If you're looking for a um, a couples therapist, then you want to make sure who you choose can help you transform your relationship. You don't want someone who's going to mediate arguments, and a lot of couples will make the mistake of just picking out the first therapist they see. And here's what I want you to look out for. The first one is that you want to make sure that when you pick a therapist, they have specialized training. A lot of people assume that if a therapist is offering couples therapy, then they're trained to do so. The thing is, 80% of couples, or excuse me, 80% of therapists who see couples don't have formalized training in couples therapy. Now, our license as a therapist doesn't require that. So, a lot of individual therapists have requests for couples and couples, that want to do therapy. And so they add it to their practice without having a specialized training. And that, there's no guidelines around this. And those individual therapists are great at what they do with an individual. But there's a complexity of relationship dynamics that comes in when you have two people. You can't just have individual therapy for two. That's like looking for insights and talking about their history. That's actually not the same thing as having a way to practice. So they might be like me. I'll be perfectly honest. I pieced together different interventions. I took an online training for couples work, and then I did a level one training. I read books and did things like that. And then I cobbled some things together initially. And what I found was I really didn't have the skills to handle these conflicts that would come in my door, the communication breakdowns. So the way to avoid this is to ask your potential therapist what kind of formal training they have in couples therapy. Do they just have a generalized approach? Do they have like a specific model? You'll hear sometimes Gottman, EFT, or the one that I um, follow as the developmental model, right? I think that is the best because I've done Gottman and I've done some EFT. So, and do they have a caseload of primarily individuals, or can you ask them like, what is your ratio of individuals to couples? And I would say that you'd want someone who has probably 50% or more of couples. And do they handle high conflict couples? If they hesitate, it might be a red flag. So the bottom line here is couples therapy isn't just individual therapy times two. You need a therapist who understands really relational dynamics, how to resolve conflict, and not someone who listens and nods. And that's also about having a decisive leader, which I think is one of the mistakes. So that's mistake one. Mistake two is picking a therapist that doesn't have a roadmap. And a lot of couples go to therapy only to spend weeks venting about their last fight, like the couples that I've told you who've seen other therapists. That therapist might have let them rehash arguments and didn't have a strategy to break the cycle. They may give them like interventions to trying to be nice, trying to do things for the other person, which are great things, but you want someone who's going to help you go past what happened this week and go to where do you want to go to? What's the long-term goal? And how do we get there? It's kind of like having a roadmap so that you don't feel like you're spinning your wheels. And the way to, I think, avoid this is to ask for the approach. For my couples, I would tell them that we're going to use the roadmap of differentiation. That means that each of you are going to discover how to share what you're thinking and feeling without creating defensiveness in the other person. And when you're able to both show up, you can start to ask questions and get curious about one another and come up with a resolution for each of the problems that you have. So that would be the part of the roadmap, that we would use. And I would ask the therapist, how do you track progress? There are certain milestones that we're going to be looking for in our practice. And what is the end goal? The analogy that I always give is if you're coming to my office, my physical office, you might use your phone GPS or your car GPS and you put the address in and then it brings you to the destination. And I think the same thing is true when we have a goal. You want to have an end destination. So where are we trying to get to? So we can figure out from where you are now and where you want to be, what is going to be the process and how are we going to track the milestones as we go along. You don't want to just pick a place that's going to talk about problems, right? You want to have clear goals, track your progress, and know what skills you need. What are you working on? That's one of the things that I generally ask a couple who's been to a different therapist. And some, it's not the therapist. I'll be honest that some couples were challenging for a previous therapist, or, they might just have had not been ready, or who knows what the actual answer was. But I would ask that partner if they said they had seen someone else, what were your goals for that work? Did the therapist help you to identify your own goals, as we talked about in the mind shift part of this? And then the third big mistake I would say is choosing a therapist who acts as a referee instead of a leader. I think you want to have someone, I've talked to a lot of therapists and I've talked to a lot of clients who there's this idea that the client comes in and they talk about whatever they want to, and the therapist is supportive unconditionally, right? You don't want that kind of therapist for you in your couples work. Maybe it's great for you in your individual work or if you're working through trauma, but the reality is that many therapists can take a neutral or a passive approach, or they may act as a mediator rather than a guide who knows exactly what the couple needs to do or helping them identify their growing edges. So they just simply listen and they validate the side of both people. And sometimes that's a little bit of help, especially for a couple that's not really recycling issues, or they're not in that bad of a place, that can work. But really, for couples therapy to be effective, you want to have a leader that you can trust, because you want to be, if you don't know what you need to do, then you want to have someone who knows what they're talking about, that can challenge you both to grow, that can give you actionable steps. You want someone who's going to give you something to do in between this session and the next session. Or if you're doing a big project like a half day or full day, you want to know what to do when you leave. Like, what's the actionable steps and the clear path that you're going to be using. And you want someone who can guide you towards that transformation. That means there's going to be some tension in the sessions. It's not about keeping the peace. It's not about taking turns to talk, although that's a definite principle of this work. So you can avoid this by asking the clinician or the coach how they're going to structure the sessions. Do they have an action step in between sessions or afterwards? And how do you work rather than just rehashing the issues, right? You want to have someone who's going to challenge you and teach you new skills. So I hope this is making sense, the three mistakes. I think the right therapist is going to make all the difference. And you don't always need a therapist. I think if you can find the guide who's going to help you. I offered the 7-day reboot, 7-day relationship reboot. I'll put it in the show notes. I haven't mentioned it for a while, but it is a really powerful way to get a jump start on changing your relationship. And you can check out some of the ideas in there. I would say the questions for you, if you're going to pursue couples therapy, is, asking the therapist, do they have specialized training? Number one. Number two, do they have a structured roadmap? Like, what is the way they're going to help you get progress? And what is their stance on handling the sessions? Like, are they going to just mediate, or do they have a plan that they're going to be a leader? The right therapist is going to help you break the cycle. They're going to help you get better at communicating, and they're going to help you really connect. I think hopefully the biggest message that I can offer you, excuse me, is that mindset changes everything. If you want to really know how to prepare for couples therapy, I have a practical guide. It's how to prepare for couples therapy. You can drop me a line on social media. You can send me an email. All of my contact info is in the show notes. And what is in this document, it's a PDF, is what you can do before any session, what you can ask yourself if you want to get the most out of therapy sessions, how you can improve your responses, and how you can start to look for real solutions and not just somebody to agree with you. It also goes over the key mindset shifts, about therapy being a process, and the small changes that you can make right away. So if you want, therapy to actually help you, you want to choose a therapist with real training. Make sure they have the roadmap and that they're going to focus on you and what you can do differently. And if this has resonated with you, what you can do next is you can, again, drop me a line, send me an email, get the practical guide to starting couples therapy. That's going to help you take the next step. And if you are enjoying this content, subscribe and leave a review. If this episode has helped you, all the reviews help so that we can get the information out and help others have relationship breakthroughs. So until next time, do what you need to do next to take the step to help your relationship progress where you want it to go.
Thanks for joining us on the Love Conscious Relationship Podcast. If you like this podcast and heard something helpful, make sure to send it to a friend and leave a review about what you liked. For more daily doses of relationship truth, follow Jessica on our socials and TikTok at Jessica Relationship Visionary.